Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and there's a lot of changes on the way for patch 9.1, particularly in the realm of PvP. At the start of Shadowlands, a lot of classes started off on a good foot, with rogues and 100% crit playstyle dominating the arenas, arms warriors with the crazy utility they bring in. Of course, fire mages still combusting on everybody, and Convoke from Druids scared everybody out of the arena. However, not all classes started off on a strong foot, and patch 9.1 seems to want to remedy that, with the Honor Talent Refresher adding fresh new Honor Talents to a variety of classes, and fixing certain aspects of specs and classes that might make them a lot better for patch 9.1. This video will cover some of the most improvements, not saying that these classes are going to be top tier or meta by any chance with these changes alone, but this is definitely an improvement from the starting patch of Shadowlands. Let's take a look at the classes most impacted positively with all these Honor Talent changes. First class of this list is going to be Unholy Death Knights. These guys were pretty popular back at BFA, and ever since Shadowlands, it's mostly been all about Frost. And Unholy DK just cannot compete damage-wise, sustain-wise, and the utility-wise from fast Death Knights. Quite a lot of changes are happening to Death Knights in general in patch 9.1. But some of the newest changes that DKs have been getting is new Honor Talents. I should mention pretty early in the video that yes, Anti-Magic Zone as the ability, that's a group utility ability, is getting a nerf. It's a 20% magic DR, but now it's going to have a cap equal to Death Knight's health scaling with versatility, so the absorb is going to be limited. So that is going to be a slight blow when it comes to PvP and group gameplay. However, Death Knights are getting quite a lot of Honor Talents, especially as Unholy spec, in order to supplement for some of the things they've been lacking. For example, all three specs of Death Knights are getting Spell Warding, which applies the rune of Spell Warding at 100% effect for your Death Knight, which passively makes you take 6% less magic damage, but also with a chance to be struck by magic abilities, you have a chance to pop on a shield. Quite a bit of an absorb, and from testing it out on the PTR, Death Knights keep getting that shield effect quite often, so it actually becomes quite a bit of absorb if there's any kind of magic damage in the arena. How about our ranged silence? On a minute cooldown, Death Knights are getting Strangulate back. It's a silence that's going to last on an enemy, and again, more pressure against casters. This can be used in order to silence a healer from afar, or maybe a healer that you're just training down with your army of undead. This gives Death Knights an interesting toolkit to deal with casters in particular, and does make them pretty strong against just about any magic user. Finally, Death Knights don't really have any way to dampen healing. Like warriors and rogues with wound poison, all those classes apply a Mortal Strike effect, which reduces the amount of healing the enemy target can get. While Unholy Death Knights are getting a Mortal Strike effect of their own with a unique way of applying it. It's called Necrotic Wounds. Gone are the days of Necrotic Strike, and now Death Knight is going to play very similarly to other classes, except for the way that you apply your Necrotic Wounds. They actually pop off of your Festering Wounds, which you have to stack up on an enemy individually, then pop them with other abilities like Scourge Strike, which takes a while, or if you use Apocalypse, it can pop a lot of them all at once. Technically, Death Knights now have an AoE Mortal Strike effect if they're able to get Festering Wounds of multiple enemies and then pop them at the same time while standing inside of Death and Decay, because then abilities like Scourge Strike cleave and Scourge Strike pops those Necrotic Wounds. But I don't think that's going to be happening that often. I think what most Death Knights are going to do is use this Mortal Strike effect to stack it on one singular enemy and train it down with abilities like Apocalypse. There is an extra benefit to the Necrotic Wounds, however, is the fact that whatever amount of healing that they deny is actually gives you that heal once the effect is gone off your target. So if the target is getting trained super hard and the healer is trying to get them up and running, and then an enemy team tries to counter pressure the Death Knight, once the Necrotic Wounds fall off, you actually get a heal based on the amount of heal that those wounds reduced. So Death Knights get even more healing. Testing it out in a 5-5-1-1 duel scenario where it's really a mono-e-mono duel, that's quite a significant amount of self-healing for a Death Knight. It's actually really not terrible. And hopefully this will translate into a little bit better self-sustainability for a class with plate armor looking as ironclad as they can, yet somehow feeling more of a glass cannon, the Death Knight. And hopefully this will allow Unholy Death Knights to shine a little bit brighter going into the next patch. Then we have Hunters, and Hunters have gotten a lot of updates, particularly in the Beast Mastery tree and Marksman tree. Starting off with Beast Mastery, who actually got Mending Bandages. I've been hearing Hunters ask for that Survival Hunter talent for so long, and they're finally looking like they're getting it in patch 9.1, which of course goes further to increase some of the Hunter survivability, since I feel like Hunter is one of the squishier classes in game generally. Besides that, we have Wild Kingdom, which is available for all three specs. It is a way for for you to swap out your pets to a cunning pet, which gives hunters even more pet play. I'm no hunter main, but the way I think most hunters would use it is maybe run a tenacity pet for arenas, so you can have maybe some sort of a damage reduction effect with a wall, and let's say you need to swap in a cunning pet for a few seconds, maybe to let your main pet heal, or maybe you just need that cunning effect of Master's Call to free you from slows or movement effects, or maybe use it for an ally instead. You could swap out your pets momentarily. Then you have more defensive options with being able to use your main hunter pet ability more often, which could give you again more defensive nature, more Master's Calls, and even in BGs, you actually can give yourself a Bloodlust effect without going sated. Now, I haven't tried this effect in arenas, but imagine if this actually could give your party a 15% haze buff as well, kind of like a mini Bloodlust in an arena. That'll be interesting. I don't think that's how it'll work. I think it'll be more used as a defensive option. While not perfect, Marksman is getting a stun. It is a little bit weird how you line it up. It has to do with concussive shot and steady shots, but it's a pretty easy way to guarantee a stun on an enemy. It does take a little bit of a ramp up. So once everybody knows how hunters stun, people are going to see those steady shots from a mile away, but at least having a stun is better than not having a stun at all. And there's more honor talents that are still going through a lot of iterations, but these are the most important ones I felt like that I should cover because they help out with some of the things that hunters were missing. Survivability, and more tools for survivability is never a bad thing, but also the stuns for marksmen have been sorely missed, and the fact that they're making a comeback I think is a good thing. Feral Druid is another class that's seen some improvement, and while not a terrible class in PvP, and there's a good chance you guys might have gotten chomped up by these bad boys during a convoke, and while it's true the Druids are almost unkillable when it comes to them popping in bear form and just having so much self-healing potential, it sometimes can be pretty difficult to deal with them. Druids are looking even better going into the next patch 9.1, particularly Feral Druids. Feral Druids, very similar to the Death Knight, don't have a Mortal Strike effect, and while they can put some pressure on enemies, sometimes it feels like they have to play specific compositions. Comps where another class can bring a Mortal Strike effect to add a little bit of pressure that sometimes a Feral might be missing through just damage alone. So Ferals getting a Mortal Strike effect actually is beneficial for Ferals. Probably bad for the rest of us, but Ferals are going to be able to play with more classes when it comes to arenas. Pairing them with Mages, Shadow Priests, and even Warlocks might be a lot easier since they now have a more similar playstyle to that of a Rogue / Warrior. Ton of bleeds to put up on everybody, great burst, decent amount of CC, so the amount of options they'll have going forward should be greater. Fury Warriors are a blast to play, and many of you PvPing are probably sticking to that Arms Warrior, and I get it, it's very powerful, but Fury is just miles more fun. The carpal tunnel you'll get from Fury Warrior is a problem, but I think it's worth it for this massive Berserker gameplay that you get. The animations are amazing. I love just building up for that big rampage and then trying to truck someone down. The always being able to use abilities without having to need rage is also a plus, but it does lack one thing that Arms Warrior has. Well, in fact, a couple things. Sustained damage, I think Arms is pretty good at that. Big on-demand burst on a very short cooldown, yeah, Arms is pretty good at that too. Fury can get there, but it does take a little bit more trying. Generally, Fury is out of the meta though. But the next patch is going to give him at least one of those things that Arms Warrior has, and that's a Mortal Strike effect. And it's actually a really good one. It's really easy to use because you don't have to change your rotation, and all you have to do is play a lot more aggressively as Fury Warrior and you'll probably just win. It's a Mortal Strike effect tied to a Rampage, and since Rampage is a 4-part ability, as in you do 4 little hits in one single global, it actually stacks up the debuff per hit of Rampage. During your full burst, when you're just fueled full of rage, you can just rampage on an enemy over and over, maintaining a massive 60% healing reduction effect on the target. This Mortal Strike effect, however, is tied to your honor talents, and you will most likely have to use this in every single arena, every single battleground that you play, because the amount of pressure you can put on an enemy is just too much. What I really like about it is just how powerful this Mortal Strike effect is. 60% healing reduction is huge. It's almost like being an Arms Warrior with constant sharper blades as long as you have the rage. I mean, Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior are still very similar. They have very similar utility to bring into an arena, but lacking Mortal Strike for Fury has been one of his biggest detriments. So hopefully this new Mortal Strike effect will bring him a little bit more front and forward in PvP. Next class and spec on the list is going to be Frost Mage, and Frost Mages have gotten quite a few quality of life things added into the next patch, as well as extra new forms of crowd control. the Ice Wall. Let's first talk about that. It's a new way to control the enemy by denying them an area by creating literally a wall of ice, which creates line of sight. You can't walk through the wall. It's like having a wall inside of an arena or a pillar. You can't get around it. A new way for you to control the enemy, not just with constant slows and roots, which is a brand new way for Blizzard to kind of craft some of these new honor talents. It's really out of the box. And I have a really good feeling that this is going to be one of the stronger honor talents and one of the strongest CCs if it's in the right hands. Besides that, Frost Mages always lacked a little bit of damage compared to Fire Mages. I mean, none of the specs of mages can really compete with fire. The amount of burst you can put out with combustion and even sustained damage you do as fire is generally pretty good. Arcane can get there, but it takes a little bit more effort. Frost can do well, but also takes more effort. So they both are two specs that are really out of the meta. However, for Frost, they are amping up the amount of damage your Frost bolts do. Your Frost bolts can shatter, so your Frost bolts are naturally going to be doing more damage. So your burst setups and lineups are still going to be pretty difficult since you're just a full-blown caster, casting away not too many insta-cast abilities except for procs. But if you can get those Frost bolts off with nice sweet shatters, you will be able to punish the enemy team quite well. I'm hoping these changes will allow Frost Mages to be more out there, so we don't just have to run into combusting Fire Mages over and over. I personally would like to see some more variety in my BGs and arenas. Warlocks are getting slight updates, starting off with Destruction Warlock, and Destro Warlock is looking quite good. First of all, the honor talent of Focus Chaos is no longer a thing, but your Chaos Bolt has been buffed to do more damage, so this way Warlocks don't actually have to choose a mandatory honor talent. They have more or less choices. Choices like a new honor talent called Bonds of Fel, which encircles an enemy in a bond to this crystal, and snaring them for 50% for 6 seconds. However, if the enemy tries to leave the crystal, it'll do damage to everybody attached to the crystal. It's an awesome honor talent that kind of forces the enemy to either stand in place or run out, which means if a melee is pursuing you, they'll have a second thoughts between taking damage or just standing in place until the bond is gone. Or you can always force the enemy out of the circle with abilities like Fear and Morticoil, abilities used to make the enemy run wildly in a random direction. Then we have Demonology with the Fel Obelisk ability and a buff to Fel Lord. Fel Lord is just going to hit a lot harder. Fel Obelisk is a new talent which kind of summons like a totem for your Demonology Warlocks. While this totem is active, your minions within 40 yards of the totem have their attack speed increased by 20% and reduce cast time of spells by 20%. Having one of your pets do 20% faster autos isn't super deadly, but when you have your main pet, a second Fel Guard, you have your Vile Fiend, you have some Demon Doggos, and maybe some Imps casting at a distance with a big Tyrant buffing all that damage up, now that's where it gets really scary. Honestly, if you haven't even thought of leveling a Warlock for patch 9.1, I feel like after this video, now you would at least want to have one as an alt, because these guys are looking fantastic going forward. And finally, we have Monks. Not the Windwalker, that spec is staying more or less the same, and while there are some slight adjustments in PvP for Brewmaster, they're not really often played in PvP. But Mistweaver, I feel like, has been a little bit bullied by Shadowlands. It is not a great healer, or at least not rated highly by most players for dungeons, not really rated highly for raids either, and in PvP, it just can't really compete like the other healers do. Can you do well as a Mistweaver? Of course you can. Is it much harder doing it as a Mistweaver than any other healer? That ends up being the sad truth. But it looks like Blizzard is giving him quite a lot of buffs. There's a lot of honor talents to go through. Things like Revival having its CD cut in half, while also providing immunity to magic effects when you use it. Having an easier time dealing with casters putting dots everywhere, as you dispel them, you actually will end up buffing your healing. Even things like Dispel Protection with Dome of Mist, where if Envelop and Mist gets sniped by Purge, it becomes a shield on an ally. It's not a toolkit that Monk normally runs with, but a lot of this stuff is great, and some classes would love to have similar honor talents. Probably a class with the most amount of changes, and I'm no Mistweaver main to explain you just how big this is, but I am a rogue main, and I can tell you exactly what rogues do to Mistweaver monks. That's why talents like Dematerialize as well as Eminence are super good when it comes to dealing with classes in such a one-shotty environment against a rogue, a class with a ton of control and even 100% critical strike if you decide to burst your cooldowns in the opener. And we're not even done with PTR testing. There's still a lot more honor talents that continue to get added to the PTR servers. And there's going to be a lot more things for us to check out as time goes on. But out of all the changes so far for 9.1, these are the biggest winners in my opinion. These classes are seeing the biggest improvements in major ways and in small ways. And I feel like some of these classes could end up being the top of the meta. Not saying that they're going to be, but there's always potential. Maelstrom Monks changes, for example, are looking really spicy. So I'm very excited to see what are some of the other updates that Blizzard is going to have for the next patch. But so far, this is the best that we have for the classes that I feel like some of them really need these buffs. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about all these updates? And are you going to be leveling any of these classes for the next patch for the buffs that were given? Thank you all so much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed. You let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.